What is up, guys? You are now tuned in to the Casual Wrestling Monday Night Raw post show. I am Nerdy D, and if you are listening, you are part of the CWC, and this is the show where we join together to overreact and answer the biggest questions coming out of Monday Night Raw this week. But before we do that, do me a little favor and tap the like button. It only takes 2 seconds, and it lets YouTube know you're listening, and it grows the Casual Wrestling Army as we continue to chip away at the IWC stronghold over online wrestling conversation. Let's jump right into housekeeping this week. Have a little bit of internal news to talk about. New show alert. The Casual PLE Experience. Me and friend of the show, Milwaukee Mike, will be doing a monthly breakdown of WWE's premium live events, giving you our predictions and hot takes, so mark that down. On the calendar, our first episode will be the week before Survivor Series. Also have something in the works as far as kind of a watch-along for Survivor Series. I want to make it sort of like a party. Possibly a big announcement coming in the next couple of weeks in regards to this show and kind of, just moving things in generally, the right direction. So more on that soon, but just be on the lookout. Hopefully we can put something together and do a live watch along of that show. That's pretty much all I got. Make sure to go to casualwrestling.com, check out the merch. There's a couple posters on there now, a bunch of new stuff. Check it out. Let me know what you think. So question number one is, and this is kind of a throwback to last week's SmackDown question, but question number one is, Nerdy D, did Monday Night Raw sway you back to Team Raw, or are you still on Team SmackDown as far as WWE goes? And let's be real. Raw this week only solidified what I thought I already knew, and that is, I'm going to double down and say I'm 100% a SmackDown guy. If there was any doubt coming into this week's Monday Night Raw, this Raw erased all of the doubt for me. And I'm not saying this isn't supposed to be an indictment of Monday Night Raw. I don't even think Monday Night Raw was bad. I just am starting to see that Monday Night Raw is objectively not for me. I've grown tired of the repetition. I think I'm growing tired of the characters. I'm tired of the oversaturation of certain people on a 3-hour show every week. It's the same thing over and over again. And I had patience for a little while, but I think I finally just kind of hit my wit's end and I go, okay, SmackDown is my show. And here's the thing. I don't know if it's because I'm over it or if I've just genuinely never picked up on this little detail. But Monday Night Raw to me feels like a show that has a bunch of above average wrestlers that are overly trying to be entertaining. They're going out of their way to try to appeal to a crowd. And I know that sounds stupid because, wrestling, you're supposed to be extra. You're supposed to be acting for the crowd. But it just feels like to me when I watch Monday Night Raw, there's just a little over-the-top emphasis of trying to get the crowd to react. And maybe that's an overreaction to the crowd kind of falling dead in the last couple of weeks. But I noticed it this week. I saw it this week when Cody Rhodes talks. There's just a cadence that I don't like. It's a pandering cadence. And then I definitely felt it with Damien Priest. If you listen to how Damien Priest responded to Cody Rhodes, you can definitely hear this strange speech pattern. Like they're trying to overemphasize certain points to the crowd and get them to react. And like I said, I don't know if that's because they've had a couple weeks where the crowd just hasn't reacted, or I don't know if I've just been naive to the fact that Monday Night Raw has superstars that tend to kind of pander to the crowd. Now, stack that on top of the fact that I'm already pretty tired of Seth Rollins' character, and though I love her in the ring, Becky Lynch can be a tad bit cringy to me on the microphone. I just feel like Raw is like the ADD of pro wrestling. I feel like Raw needs a Xanax. It needs to just calm down a little bit. It feels like it's kind of in my face for 3 hours. That's 3 hours. That's a little much for 3 hours of wrestling for it to just kind of feel like overacting nonstop. And let me set the record straight, because when I say over the top, I'm not referring to the segments that are done correctly and purposefully in that way. Like, I love what Pretty Deadly does on SmackDown that I would consider to be over the top. And I love what Alpha Academy does on Monday Night Raw that I would also consider to be over the top. But I feel like there's this level of overemphasis in things that are supposed to be serious and come off with a sense of reality where it just almost feels like I'm watching a high school play sometimes. And I can already hear a subset of the IWC that says, if you don't like it, then don't watch it. The problem with that mentality, number one, is I have a podcast. I have to talk about this stuff. But the real problem with that is that littered in between some of that cringy wrestling stuff that I don't like, there's really good content on Monday Night Raw. It's just not 3 hours worth of content. There's 2 good hours on Monday Night Raw. I almost think that there's a podcast in just deciphering what you should and shouldn't watch when you watch Monday Night Raw. Look at it. Like, the tag team division is starting to look phenomenal. You have Gunther, you have Gable. There's a lot to like. So I'm not going to just completely shit on Monday Night Raw, but it's just not connecting to me as far as the main storylines go right now. All right, so that then leaves me with question number 2 this week, and that is, Nerdy D, what particularly are you not fond of on Monday Night Raw right now? And I'll tell you, let's talk about Cody Rhodes and Damien Priest, and let's try to make some sense of it. Maybe I'm missing something. But is this are we all in agreement that Cody Rhodes versus Damien Priest might not be a premium live event quality match without some kind of stipulation, without any real consequences? Because this is just kind of more of the same when it comes to Cody Rhodes. This is just another kind of bump in the road that doesn't make a lot of sense. This just feels to me like another Monday Night Raw main event. And it's being thrown on a show that I've seen some people say is supposed to be a WrestleMania level type show in Crown Jewel. They've just gone to this bucket of water so many times that I guess it's just not feeling special to me anymore. You've done this match in 100 different ways. Now you've just pulled everybody else out of it, and we're left with Damien Priest and Cody Rhodes. And on top of all of that, icing on the cake here for me, why does Cody Rhodes have to be injured for every major premium live event match? Like, I don't understand that. Like, that's more effective if you only do it maybe once a year. If every time Cody Rhodes goes into one of these big premium live events, he has to be injured, it's almost comical. I think I put in the Discord, I was like, oh God, now we're going to have a cast on the ankle. We had a cast on the shoulder. You know, we had real injuries with Cody Rhodes, but it just feels like a certain amount of a crutch for Cody Rhodes is to come into a match when he's injured. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm just not connecting. I'm not connecting. And let me clarify that what that means. Damien Priest and Rhea Ripley are running around telling Seth Rollins that he can't cash in on Damien, and he's done a good job avoiding him, even though we've seen 10 times on TV them insult our intelligence, and Damien Priest is just not going to cash in the opportunities where someone would normally cash in. So when I look at these matches, and I look at matches like Damien Priest and Cody Rhodes, it just doesn't feel like there's enough at stake to call this a premium match. Like, I would love, and I know this seems pretty obvious and cliche, but add the briefcase to the story here. What can it hurt to put something on the line? Damien Priest keeps obviously talking about Cody Rhodes finishing his story. He should tease Cody Rhodes with the opportunity to obtain a free shot at Roman Reigns whenever he wants. When you look at the next 6 months for Monday Night Raw, I don't see where Damien Priest fits into that world title picture. I think that they might have missed the boat a little bit by not having him cash in on Finn Balor and having Finn Balor beat Seth Rollins and doing that feud earlier. It's what I say about WWE all the time. They tend to let things cool off, and I think they've let Damien Priest cool off a little bit. So where do you have Damien cash in at this point? Is Damien the guy you want the title on come WrestleMania? If he is, cool. Let's do that. I don't think he is. I don't think that Damien Priest's name goes on that marquee in one of those, there's kind of 4 big spots. I don't think Damien Priest is one of those 4 guys. And I think that Raw suffers from WrestleMania booking. And what I mean by that is there's kind of a curse where when you start booking out towards WrestleMania too early, certain guys get pigeonholed. And so you start booking these matches like a year in advance, and then we know that Cody is just in waiting until he can insert himself back into Roman Reigns' story. So until then, you just have to book Cody Rhodes to protect him enough that he's still a viable opponent when he gets to Roman, but you got to put him in matches, I guess, that feel interesting, but ultimately, to me, they fall flat when you kind of know where you're headed. And here's my other problem with Cody and Damien. This is another premium live event where the tag team titles are being held up in a match that isn't a tag team match. There's an entire tag team division that is foaming at the mouth to get screen time and claim that main prize. Meanwhile, the titles are being booked into a corner on guys that you need to protect and guys that you want to push as single superstars. You've had opportunities to get those belts off of these teams, yet you still continue because WWE's booked himself into a corner in other positions, because they have a title on Seth Rollins, and Seth, for some reason, Seth is not main eventing the shows. Now, he's main eventing premium live events, but he's not main eventing Monday Night Raw. The main event has been Cody Rhodes in this Judgment Day story, and I guess to make it feel interesting, they felt, let's put the tag team titles on them, even though I think they've done a terrible job ever since Kevin Owens and Sami won the tag team titles and transferring them to Judgment Day and then transferring them to Cody and Jay. That's felt messy. When you have so many tag teams that are ready to go, it just kind of feels messy to me. Now, if they bring this all back together, if they get creative at Crown Jewel and all of this Rhea Ripley stuff starts to come together, all the kind of backroom deals she's been making and planning, and that all comes together and Drew McIntyre somehow a part of all this, okay, it could get interesting, but the reality for me is that I think more than likely this is just a holding match for Cody Rhodes. They need to put him on the card at Crown Jewel because everybody wants to see Cody, and this is more of a meaningless match than it is something in the larger workings of WWE storytelling. But as it stands right now, Cody Rhodes versus Damian Priest as just a straight up match on Crown Jewel, it feels like it's a little bit flat to me. Nerdy D, I know you might be tired of talking about it, but do you think that Shinsuke Nakamura was continuing to tease a CM Punk return at Survivor Series? Let's break this down. All of these teases, all of these coincidences that WWE is using in the last couple of episodes of Monday Night Raw and SmackDown, you guys tell me what you think. Like, what do you think? Like, are these real coincidences? Is this just happening? Or does WWE know what they're doing? So Seth Rollins dropped a bunch of lines and promos in the past couple of weeks. Roman Reigns has dropped a couple of suspect lines in his promos in the last couple of weeks. Shinsuke Nakamura has gone out of his way to say things in promos and do things like use the GTS that have led us all to start going down this Bray Wyatt-esque rabbit hole. And then you add the USA Network dropping a tease. And that, to me, coincidence, you could point to one or two situations. You got to convince me that there is a world where WWE is going to completely bait the fans into watching Survivor Series knowing that this is going on. They know this is happening. Like, you have to convince me there's a world where WWE baits fans into watching Survivor Series knowingly teasing people to something that's not going to happen. And then you got to convince me, though, on the other side, that there's a world where WWE brings back Randy Orton and CM Punk in the same night. So those are two kind of conflicting feelings that I have. Can you imagine the momentum coming out of Survivor Series if you bring back both CM Punk and Randy Orton on the same night? Now, winter is a notoriously slow season for WWE. And all of a sudden, in your slowest time of the year, you turn it around and you spike the ratings by bringing back two needle movers. Both of those guys are immediate needle movers for WWE. How would we feel if Randy Orton immediately comes back and attacks Seth Rollins after his match with Drew McIntyre, and we get a nice little heel run of Randy Orton as the world champion? That'd be fun. I'm not completely against that. Look, I'll be honest with you. I'm not big on Raw right now. Raw could use an influx of new faces. From just a pure rating standpoint, setting aside personal feelings about CM Punk, if you bring CM Punk back, you immediately opened and widened the gap between AEW and WWE even more. I think that just from a proof of concept perspective, a returning CM Punk that is successful sends a huge message to any guy in AEW who is going to become a free agent within the next year. It sends the message that WWE is the bigger promotion. WWE can make you a star. Just look at the last couple of acquisitions between both companies. You know, I'd argue that Jade leaves AEW and is immediately elevated to a bigger star, even though she hasn't even wrestled yet. I think that her star power is already bigger. I think that there are more people with eyes on Jade Cargill right now in WWE than there ever were with her in AEW. Then on the flip side, Edge goes to AEW and he's immediately thrust into negative headlines with Ricky Starks, and he kind of underperforms, and you start seeing these optics of empty arenas, and whether right or wrong, Edge is going to bear a little bit of that weight. And then you go back even further and you talk about Cody Rhodes, who left AEW to go on to main event WrestleMania against Roman Reigns, and who we all assume is going to win the WWE title within the next 365 days. And so you look over at AEW and you go, they don't have that. You know, Daniel Bryan, Andrade, Miro, they all left WWE to go to AEW. And all they've gotten is a bunch of, quote unquote dream matches that no one watches. And what I'm trying to say is that if I'm MJF and I have to look closely at how things are shaping out in the landscape of pro wrestling, WWE looks like the only real possibility if I want to reach the top of the mountain. So when it comes to CM Punk, somebody's going to have to explain to me, what is the real negative from bringing CM Punk back to WWE? What is that thing that makes you go, no, we can't do that? You know this. You know if he starts any shit, you just immediately fire him. There's no questions asked. You don't let him run around and pout. You don't let him get into a backstage skirmish. If he just even gives you a whiff of bullshit, you're gone. You're fired. WWE has that capability. And CM Punk has to know at this point that the leash is short. He has to know when he goes in for that meeting, that kind of entry meeting into WWE, they have to lay out for him clearly, this is your job. These are your goals. This is who we want you to put over. And if you don't think that's reasonable, don't sign on the dotted line, because this is what we're using you for, and we're going to use you to your best advantage. I also don't think that CM Punk is a guy with an ego that can't put other people over. I think that was always his intention in AEW. I just think he has a very specific way that he wants to do things. And a lot of things that I said about Logan Paul last week on the SmackDown post show, I think those same things pertain to CM Punk. He's a guy who wants to make great wrestling moments. I think he believes in legacy. Whereas I think Logan Paul wants to make viral moments, I think CM Punk wants to make legacy moments. And I think CM Punk respects the business. Now, the IWC may completely fucking disagree with me, but I honestly, that is my take on CM Punk, is he's a guy who just wants to create legacy. And I think his time in AEW probably made him respect and understand the business that is WWE a little better. Now, Milwaukee Mike sent me a clip from Twitter for an edit of CM Punk returning at Survivor Series. It was, these clips that were cut together, and it was Seth Rollins standing in the ring. The lights go dark. Cult of Personality hits with no backtrack. It's just the vocal acapella. Dude, shit gave me goosebumps. And I'm not like an overreact kind of guy outside of being on a podcast, but that shit got me hyped. I was like, let's go. This is what I want to see. Now, I will say, I think he's not coming back after Seth Rollins. I think initially that it looks like he's going to come back against Shinsuke Nakamura if that's in the work. But the way they cut this together, it all still works. Here's my only fear. This is a fear I have, and I know I'm getting ahead of myself because he's not even back in WWE yet, and and I have fears about what's going to happen. I just hope that if he does come back to WWE, they don't bring him back as a babyface. They don't make the same mistake that AEW did and try to make him the good guy. I think that if they just wanted to destroy ratings, you wanted to be the biggest show on television, have CM Punk show back up under the authority of Vince McMahon, like it's one last ditch effort for Vince McMahon to take back over his company. Now, Vince's ego is never going to allow for this, but this would blow people's minds. And have Vince McMahon be an on-screen character trying to get his company back, and you see CM Punk to recruit disgruntled wrestlers into a faction that essentially turned into like a authority, 2.0 going up against the kind of legacy TKO wrestlers. You could even have a faction called TKO, would be pretty cool. But, have it all come to a head at like WrestleMania. CM Punk could recruit guys like AJ Styles, Bobby Lashley, Austin Theory. It could work. That's me just going off on a tangent. But I ultimately, someone's going to have to explain to me why CM Punk doesn't come back. Like, really, what is the downside? What is the down? Yes, you have a lot of IWC fans on the internet who are going to go, oh, we're not going to watch if CM Punk comes back. You fuckers weren't watching anyway. So you're going to have to tell me from a casual fan standpoint, what is the problem with bringing CM Punk back? All right, last question. Nerdy D, can Nia Jax survive and handle the weight of being a world champion if she does indeed win at Crown Jewel? Look, here's the thing. I think that Nia Jax has been a serviceable heel since she's returned back to WWE. She's had moments that show what she could be and what she should have always been as far as being a monster heel, but the nights where they hand her a microphone and she starts to talk, it kind of breaks the illusion for me of what she should be. And it's not Nia Jax's fault. I don't think it's her fault. I think it's WWE's fault for putting her in situations where she's forced to talk and address other wrestlers and address the crowd, especially Rhea Ripley. There's a potential to do something special with Nia Jax and Rhea Ripley. But in order to do that, in order for that to work, WWE has to understand the skill sets that each one of those women have. Nia Jax can be intimidating, especially when she's not talking. Less is more. It's the same thing we said about Ronda Rousey. Sometimes just standing there and a look is all someone needs to come off as intimidating. When she starts to whine and she starts to talk and try to explain herself, she loses value. Someone who is intimidating like Nia Jax does not need to whine and does not need to explain themselves. So if Nia Jax does win the title at Crown Jewel, I think that her reign needs to be on the extreme side of being a heel. Lots of cheating, lots of underhanded tactics, more kind of laughing than promos, less talking, just maniacal kind of evil. Make Rhea Ripley have to work to get back to the title picture. Here's an issue that was glaringly obvious to me after watching Monday Night Raw this week. Rhea Ripley at some point in the last year skipped past the idea that she was going to be a star and decided, I'm going to be a mega star now. I'm going to be a supernova. And that's not just from the fans' perspective, because she gets phenomenal pops when she comes to the ring, but also it's because of how good she has become in every facet of pro wrestling. Now, I might be overreacting a little bit, but I think that Rhea Ripley has surpassed all of the other women in WWE with microphone skills. I don't think there's any woman in the WWE that is better on a microphone than Rhea Ripley. And while I say a lot of Raw feels overacted and forced, Rhea Ripley's clean in her delivery. Very CM Punkish, very real. There's a lot of raw emotion when she talks. So if you don't want to make Nia stand in the ring and go word to word with Rhea Ripley, what you do is you almost have Nia Jax ignore what Rhea's saying. And I would say that when we talk about Rhea Ripley, the other point that I want to make is I think she's become as good in the ring as far as X's and O's go that I think that there's nobody better. And I'm not going to say she's the best, but I think there's nobody better. I don't think technically anybody's better. So once again, you don't want to put Nia Jax into a position where she has to be technical. So and lastly, as far as looks go, I think that the problem for Nia Jax is she's intimidating when she's standing across the ring from almost everybody except Rhea Ripley. So what I'm talking about here, when you take all those things into consideration, Nia Jax needs to be booked as a squirmy, sneaky, nasty heel against Rhea Ripley. It's the only way it works. It's the only way it benefits Rhea Ripley long term, is to have to achieve past all of the odds. If Nia Jax wins at Crown Jewel and you start sticking a microphone in her hand week after week, the crowd is going to lose patience. She's not going to be able to get over the way you want her to. So what you do is you have her win and you just have her continue to be dominant. But here's a bigger concern that I have at this point. And this goes outside of the control of WWE and outside the control of Rhea Ripley. But I think Rhea Ripley has outgrown the Judgment Day. And I know a lot of people aren't going to like to hear that, but all this secret meeting bullshit and taking care of Damien Priest and doing work for Finn Balor, that's really become a waste of time and talent as far as Rhea Ripley goes. I think that Rhea Ripley needs to be 100% committed to the women's division, because she can, and I think will, end up being the greatest women's wrestler of all time. I say that with a lot of confidence. The things I see in her ability and in the way she's progressed in such a short amount of time, I think right now I could make the argument that she already is and kind of become the new big deal. But I definitely can see in the next 5 years that Rhea Ripley is the biggest thing in women's wrestling. And I will give credit to the Judgment Day for that. The Judgment Day has showcased her for the last year, but I just think at this point she's become bigger than the faction. She should keep Dom. I'm not going to say that she should get rid of Dominic Mysterio, because I think Dom is the perfect sidekick to Rhea Ripley. Honestly, if I'm booking WWE, I never split them up. I think that forever I keep Dom and Rhea together. I treat them kind of like Macho Man and Miss Elizabeth, and I make them a pair that is iconic throughout wrestling history. But speaking of Dom, let's take a little side trip here. Speaking of Dom, I want to sidetrack a little bit to address the IWC and how all of a sudden it's become cool as shit to jump on shitting on Dominic Mysterio's. Because I've always been someone who's been extremely critical of Dominic, but I like to believe that I've always been truthful and I've always been fair. The IWC all of a sudden thinks it's cool just to shit on Dominic Mysterio because somebody did some research and found out that they're pumping in crowd noise when he grabs a microphone. We've known this. This is not new news. And like this idea that theatrics in wrestling are a problem, like where do you draw the line? Do you have a problem when Shotzi comes out and fires a fake missile out of her tank? We don't, I mean, it's cringy, but it's part of wrestling, right? Kane used to summon fire. The Undertaker buried people in caskets and could shoot lightning. Like, so what? They pump some crowd noise in and the IWC loses their shit. That's where you draw the line. The difference to me is acknowledging that something is happening. We know it's happening, and losing your shit over it. These guys who, they got to stop. This is over the top. Sure, like make a comment and then move on. The fact that you dwell on it week after week, that is how I define people who are the IWC. The IWC needs to look at the rest of the internet. There are people who genuinely believe that Dominic Mysterio is getting this heat. So by all logic, WWE, their tactics are working. There are people who believe this is real. And I get mislabeled all the time as the Dominic Mysterio hater. And I call bullshit on that. I'm truthful and I'm objective. I think that Dominic Mysterio is a great wrestling character. I think that he is a mid-card dream. He won't be a world champion unless they make drastic changes to him. And I think that he's a very likable person outside the ring. I think that's all fair and objective. I don't think that I'm being overly critical. I don't think that I'm talking shit about the way they pump in crowd noise or the way they book him. But if you look at the Judgment Day, I would say at this point, it's done its job. It did better than most factions do. Rhea Ripley was elevated to a megastar. Damien Priest has become a main eventer. Dominic Mysterio has solidified himself on the mid-card. I would argue that maybe Finn Balor is the only one who didn't increase his standing in the WWE, but then I'd argue that the Judgment Day has allowed him to show a lot of personality that a lot of us hadn't seen from Finn Balor. So I won't argue that the Judgment Day has to break up, but I think it's time at least for a shakeup or a new purpose or just a change in direction. The Cody Rhodes, the Sami Zayn, the Super Friends, that's all kind of run its course. It's time to either let JD McDonough into the group or don't let him into the group. It's time to stop teasing that. It's time to let Rhea Ripley start focusing on the women's division. It's time to get the tag team titles off of Finn Balor and Damien Priest. And I'd argue that it really is time to get Damien Priest out of the group and let him stand on his own 2 feet and see that if he can really swim in the main event pool. But as it stands, I think a lot of my issues with Monday Night Raw stem from the Judgment Day, stem from seeing the same shit week after week after week. It's just the Judgment Day over and over and over again. And unless there's a shakeup, I don't foresee my opinion changing in the near future. All right, let's talk some news. NXT was tonight. Lyra, I'm gonna butcher this name. Lyra Valkyria defeated Becky Lynch to become the new NXT Women's Champion at Halloween Havoc in a match that featured Jade Cargill watching from a throne. I went back and watched this match. I didn't watch live. I was at my daughter's cheer practice while this was taking place, so I got to come home and watch it on DVR. And that was a hell of a match. I mean, NXT puts on solid wrestling. I still think they have an advantage because of circumstances, but that was a hell of a match. and it was nice to see Becky Lynch pass the torch. I talk shit about Becky Lynch being a little bit cringy for my liking, but that's just my personal opinion. And deep down inside, I know there's not a bad thing you can really say as far as Becky Lynch goes in the world of professional wrestling. She is everything that a professional wrestler is supposed to be. She sells tickets. She moves merchandise. She works well as a heel, works well as a babyface. It seems like she gets along with everybody, and she puts talent over. In my book, it doesn't get better than that. She checks every box as far as being a professional wrestler. In my opinion, right now, Becky Lynch is the greatest of all time. And I know that's not a popular opinion. I know a lot of people will go Trish Stratus, they'll go Becky Lynch, they'll throw out some weird Japanese names. But as far as I'm concerned, when you're ticking every box down that checklist, I think Becky Lynch has it all. And I don't watch a ton of NXT, so I'm not going to pretend to know the path of Lyra Valkyria. But I will say that it is from what I've seen, she's just another unexpected jewel that WWE has tucked away in its developmental program. And it's almost to me like NXT at this point is running on all cylinders and is just printing new stars right now. The future of WWE is in good hands if they can keep creating stars like this. Nice little touch. It was a nice little touch having Jade Cargill in a throne above the arena watching the match. So I guess, are we all in agreement now? Jade Cargill is going to be in NXT. And that, to me, that is the scariest possibility as far as bringing Jade Cargill into WWE. That means that she is serious about learning and getting better at the craft of wrestling. So what I don't understand is, this is something I don't understand. The IWC is all over Jade Cargill right now. They're talking shit. They're saying she wasn't that big of an acquisition, that she won't pan out to be anything. Here's what the IWC doesn't understand. If NXT could take someone like Mandy Rose and elevate her to the level they did with the talent that she has, what do you think they're going to do with somebody like Jade Cargill, who is athletic and obviously is aware that she needs to polish certain things up to be what she can be? And this is not meant to be a knock on Mandy Rose, because I think Mandy Rose had a hell of a run in NXT, but I think that Jade Cargill is just elevated in every department that matters when it comes to pro wrestling. She's more athletic. I think she has better charisma. I think she can be better on a microphone. And I think while they're different, they're equally eye-catching in the looks department. I think Jade Cargill has the potential to be what Mandy was on another just elevated level, and that's not a bad place to land. I'd say that Becky Lynch takes a break after this, but the way she busts her ass and her work rate, I wouldn't be surprised if Becky Lynch shows up as a sixth person in the Fatal 5 match at Crown Jewel. WWE opens up the All-State Arena to its full capacity for Survivor Series based on ticket sales. This scares me a little bit. This could go sketchy for me because these tickets are all being sold on the anticipation of things that have not been announced yet. And let's not lie to ourselves. One of those things is the biggest factor in these ticket sales being as big as they are right now. Now, there's three things. Fans are expecting to see a War Games match. I don't know if that's going to happen. I feel like it's most likely to happen. I don't think you wait this long to disappoint people with an announcement that, oh, this is just a regular ass Survivor Series. That seems pointless. I think that internally in WWE, War Games has to be considered one of the big draw premium live events in the future. And so I think if we saw it in NXT, then it probably wouldn't be on the main roster. But the fact that we didn't see one in NXT, I think leads me to believe that Survivor Series going forward is going to be a War Games situation. Number two, I think that based on what I've read and based on the temperature from fans on the internet, I think everybody thinks Randy Orton is returning at Survivor Series. So I think there's a high anticipation for that. I think a certain amount of tickets are selling to see Randy Orton return. But number three, what we all know is that Chicago tickets are being sold on the hope and dream that CM Punk makes a triumphant return to WWE. Now, I get it. This isn't the first time that WWE has let rumors swirl around about somebody returning. They did it a few times with Bray Wyatt. They've done it with other people. But this is Chicago, man. This is a crowd that can turn on you if they sense they were being bullshitted about Punk being there. And I know WWE has not said anything, but once again, I go on this feeling that you got to get in front of things like this if it's not going to happen. Now, I'm sure WWE could sell out Allstate Arena without CM Punk. So if I was WWE, I would nip this in the butt and make some sort of announcement that CM Punk is not part of the company. I just come out and say it. I just go, look, CM Punk, we have no plans to make him part of the future in WWE. Don't expect a surprise. I would come out and say that. That way people will not watch the show with anticipation because right or wrong, this is one of those events that if WWE doesn't say anything, there's going to be a cloud of anticipation the entire night that is either for this huge expressive pop moment or just a major letdown at the end of the show. The narrative coming out of Survivor Series could be Randy Orton and CM Punk both returning to Monday Night, or not to Monday Night Raw, I'm assuming, but both returning to WWE on the same night. The optics just couldn't line up better. This is Chicago. If you want to set and make a statement, this is where you do it. Last story is Chris Jericho states that AEW defied the odds to become a crucial competitor and alternative to WWE. He was quoted as saying, "We didn't even have TV at the time. Just my boss, Tony Khan, had a lot of passion and he had the money for it. We had a roster of guys that I felt could do something. And then when I got involved, we were able to get on TBS and then kind of went from there," said Jericho. Man, that's such an egotistical statement. I don't, there's such a better way to phrase that. I'm going to admit I didn't see the whole interview, so this could be completely pulled out of context, but just judging that one quote, I don't love the way that's said. I think that this is a little bit of an oversimplification of what happened in the formation of AEW. And this is why people like myself get turned off when AEW wrestlers and Tony Khan start talking. I will be the first to admit, AEW has done a solid job as a alternate niche to WWE. You carved out your little corner of the IWC and you created a product that there was definitely a need for. AEW is something that's needed, and I think it makes, at the end of the day, it makes WWE better. But let's not pretend like creating AEW was this long shot that you want it to feel like, right? In this quote, you failed to mention Cody Rhodes' name, which I think is just asinine. Like Cody Rhodes had nothing to do with that company being successful. And then you go on to say that your boss had money. He had all the money. He has all the money in the world, and he also has the backing of his father. And I imagine that being owners of an NFL team gives you ties to television networks and ways to open doors that most other people just can't open. It is okay for somebody in AEW to just come out and say, we're proud of what we've done. We are where we are. We've had highs and lows, and we're proud of what we've done. It's not okay to make it sound like you were just a little indie company that popped up out of nowhere and you've accomplished so much. Look, if Elon Musk wanted to start a fast food company, having no experience. He has enough money to bully his way into that business. Number one, he can hire away executives that know what they're doing, and they'll have him up and running quicker than somebody who just has an idea to sell hamburgers. That's reality. When you have deep pockets, you're not playing the same game as most startup companies. Getting Chris Jericho was a good grab, but it's kind of the same thing as getting Edge. Let's not pretend it's something it's not, and that WWE was dying to re-sign these guys. Let's not pretend that TNA didn't have a run on the same level as AEW, 10 or 15 years ago. I think lots of people like to act like when you have a new startup wrestling company that this is a disadvantage. When the reality to me is when you have something new, it gets a certain amount of curiosity and viewership just because there are no expectations. When I jumped back in to the pool of watching wrestling like 3 years ago, I gravitated towards AEW at first. I thought, damn, this is a fresh product. It's so different. I saw guys that I used to love from the Attitude Era, like Christian and Jericho, and I saw Miro, and I thought, this looks cool. And it took 3 months for me to realize, oh, it's a clusterfuck. This has a lot of potential, but they keep doing weird shit. They keep putting people I've never heard of on the TV. They keep telling me about these dream matches that I have no fucking context for. And so the problem isn't being a startup. The problem is having longevity. How do you fare when the guys start to retire? When some of the gas tank gets low? When guys start to get unhappy? How do you bounce back when you start losing free agent battles? When the ratings drop a little bit? And so far, it looks like they're not doing a good job of bouncing back. And instead of just being humble and taking the L's, because there's L's. Every company has L's. WWE's had L's. But instead of taking those L's, AEW and the IWC, they double down and they say all kinds of crazy shit. Like if you talk to IWC people now, they tell you, we never liked Cody Rhodes. That's bullshit. They tell you Jade Cargill can't wrestle. Well, that's bullshit. It's that mentality that drives away your most marketable superstars. I think that if AEW, instead of talking about being a competitor to WWE, started pushing the narrative that they are comfortable where they are and that they are okay being a niche product, they would have more success. The problem is that WB doesn't want to hear things like that. Sponsors don't want to hear things like that. And while Tony Khan can say his pockets are deep, he's still in the business of making money. And he doesn't like when the optics look bad. All of these images coming out of the hard camera side at AEW, they don't look good. I don't care what the TV ratings are. I don't care how much of an impact ticket sales actually have on the business. The fact of the matter is it doesn't look good. So if I'm AEW, book smaller venues. Perception is everything. You can call yourself an alternative, but when the optics show otherwise, you're not convincing anybody. The honeymoon period is over for AEW, and that's hard for the IWC to accept. Now you have real decisions to make. If you keep poking the bear that is WWE and trying to call yourself competition, they're going to do what they did with NXT, and they're going to bring the humble to you. Yeah, you can say what the fuck you want about them bringing John Cena and The Undertaker back, but they have that ability. They have the ability to put their foot on your throat whenever they feel like it. That's not a victory. You're not competing. They're allowing you to survive right now. And instead of being humble and playing nice and becoming a niche IWC indie product, you continue to fight back. You need to embrace that you have a different audience, and that's okay. I think that you could have people who cross over if you just shut up. I think that you talk about tribalism in professional wrestling. I think it's AEW that breeds that. It's the IWC that breeds that. And then they want to throw their hands up and say, why can't we all just be friends? Well, no, you guys started that. And now that times are hard, you guys don't want to have those real conversations. And instead of just saying, look, the WWE is great, we want to be that third tier product, you guys, you get all pissy. And it's the things like Tony Khan coming out and saying, we're not here to take every person who gets dropped by WWE. That's not who we are. Instead of saying that, how about just saying something like, hey, we're fortunate to be able to utilize the talent that WWE doesn't have creative plans for. That's just more elegant. It just doesn't start a pissing competition. Right now, AEW is not in competition with WWE. Let's be honest. They're in competition with NXT. And AEW doesn't want to be a developmental brand. And you guys can keep screaming all you want that NXT is the third brand of WWE, but you're playing semantics with words. It's the developmental brand of WWE. We can call it a third brand. If that makes y'all happy, it's the third brand that is the developmental brand of WWE. It literally takes place in a building called the Performance Center. It is literally the first stop for new wrestlers to the company. It would be like calling college football an alternative pro league to the NFL. Everyone in the NXT has an aspiration to get called up to Monday Night Raw or Friday Night SmackDown. Everybody on NXT has aspirations to make the money that guys on Monday Night Raw and SmackDown are making. Nobody is an NXT lifer. Nobody wants to be on NXT for their entire career. Just like no college football player wants to be in college any longer than they have to be. AEW needs to solidify itself as a third brand in wrestling and be comfortable in that spot. Stop booking large arenas. Stop trying to set records. Stop trying to change the optics. You guys, you can scream how impressive it is, but every time we see those pictures, we know what's really going on. And here's a truth bomb for IWC and AEW fans. If you took Triple H and you gave him the AEW roster and Tony Khan's money, he would compete with WWE on a higher level than AEW does right now. And that is all I have for you this week. Make sure to watch the Casual Wrestling Podcast that comes on every Thursday night, the Champ and the Chick that post every Monday, the SmackDown Post Show that post every Saturday. Hit the like button, share this episode with somebody you know. Casual Wrestling merch is available on casualwrestling.com. Check that out. And until next time, keep it casual, my friends. I'm tapping out.